this is a Rorschach, and the Rorschach test was an ink blot test. So they would put ink and they would sort of pancake it out, and it would make these two sort of symmetrical sides, and they would run these by psychiatry patients to kind of get an idea of what they saw and where their mind might be depending on where they went when they saw a certain image. So some person could see a butterfly and someone else could see maybe like a building on fire, right? So this one is clearly a wolf. Hopefully you can see the wolf. But Rorschach test is interesting to me, and it's part of the reason I have one on my wall, because it's kind of a symbol of how we can look at the events and the things that happen to us in our lives in a positive way or a negative way, and we can go forward making progress, or we can let stuff that's uncontrollable or just tough times in general really bog us down. So I'm going for a walk today because I never exercise because I hate exercise, but I need to get outside and it's really nice. One thing about the Midwest is that it's never sunny, and so when it's sunny you have to do something about it. And so for me, the Rorschach kind of comes back to the concept of reframing. How do you frame the situation? How do you look at the situation? Like, what's the lens that you look for? It's the classic sort of glass half full, glass half empty thing. When I had my first elbow surgery in college, after I got over the grief of it, I took it upon myself to kind of frame it as, all right, well, what were some of the things that were wrong about me, about my mechanics, about my body, that now since I'm not playing, I have like infinite time to fix. And so that was kind of how I went about it. And over time I had a little bit of excitement that, all right, even though this happened, I have this downtime to sort of fix myself and to become a new me that was better than before. So that was just an example of reframing for me. And in the end, it all comes back to that same thing. How do you look at the events that happen? Because we can't control what goes on. And when we try to control what happens in our life, it doesn't work very well, especially on baseball field or sports field. And so a lot of this boils down to control. All of us want it, but most of us really just can't get it. And the other concept that I really, really dislike, that a lot of people like, is the idea that everything happens for a reason. We all have good and bad things that happen to us. And a lot of people, and I'm not picking on them, they say, oh, everything happens for a reason. Well, when we have good things that result from bad things, so I know I overcame a couple of surgeries, and in the grand scheme of things, it's not even a very big deal. There's a lot of people that have way worse illnesses and injuries, and there's tons of death and destruction in the world, but we can't just say that they all happen for some reason. Really, it's how we respond to them. When I look back at the bad things that have happened in my life, especially as an athlete, they didn't happen for a reason. There was no purpose behind me having a paper mache elbow and being on the bench all the time. There was no bigger purpose in that. I just chose to reframe the situation in a positive way, and I grew from it. I learned to accept the challenges and find ways to come back, and I became tougher and more resilient from it. So to say that that was the reason it happened, to me is false. In the end, you could say that I learned some things and some good things happened, but on the other side of the coin, the consequences of all that are still there. I could have maybe pitched in the major leagues. I could have gotten farther and done other things had I not been hurt. So is that the reason? Like, I wasn't allowed to have those? I wasn't deserving of that? No, I don't think so. But say I'm wrong, and say there is a bigger thing happening, and say whatever negative thing happens to you is part of some bigger scheme that we just aren't aware of yet. Even if that's true, the response is still the only thing that matters. It still only matters how you respond to it, because no one else intervenes and shows you what you should do or what should happen. And I'm sure, depending on your religious views, that's also up for debate, and that's not the purpose of this, but it really just goes back to action and response, cause and effect, all that stuff. And to me, the concept of reframing is just a huge part of our ultimate happiness in life. People who are good at it don't perceive their struggles and their challenges and their roadblocks to be as detrimental to their happiness as people who get wrapped up in stuff they can't control, get wrapped up in woe is me and why is this happening and all of that. So it's really just a mindset thing. And that's why when I think about the Rorschach, it's just a good symbol of the way we choose to view the world, and the way we sort of innately view the world. This is Lieutenant Colonel George Custer, who died at the Battle of Little Bighorn along with all of his men in the 7th Cavalry. Colonel Custer was tasked with moving Indians off of United States territory and onto their reservations, and otherwise they were treated as hostile. When he stumbled upon the camp of Sitting Bull, he decided to form a surprise attack rather than wait for reinforcements. As we all know, that led to the slaughter of every last man in the 7th Cavalry. The cavalry ain't coming. That's one of my favorite things to remind myself of when I start to feel overwhelmed, or I start to feel down, or I start to feel like I just can't accomplish the things that I want to, or that uncontrollable things are just continuing to beat me down. And I don't think my life is really much harder than anyone else's. I'm a pretty privileged white guy in America in 2019, where I can live a comfortable living and earn money on the internet. Like, it's crazy. I probably have one of the easiest lives in the history of humankind. But it still comes back when we struggle to how do we respond to it. And for me, knowing that no one's rumbling in on their horses to get me out of it is empowering, because it reminds me that I need to focus on myself, that I need to turn back to education, turn back to trying to find new solutions, and that often leads me to turn outside of myself. So I look in myself for, I guess, the strength, but then who can I learn from? Who's done this before? Who do I have in my corner who might be able to show me the way? And so as I finished my walk, reaching my destination, I found myself reminded often recently, writing my book and recounting old stories, that I'm really just a product of my experiences and my responses. And so when I see the Rorschach on my wall, it's simply a nice reminder that I'll see what I choose to see.